Welcome to another episode of the Woman Up podcast, a place where female founders find success, sisterhood, and everything else in between. I wanted to let you guys know that the podcast is dedicated to our community for women who are navigating life together, growing together, learning all the ins and outs of business and life. If you want to find out more about the community and how you can be involved, just stay tuned. I will tell you all about that later. This isn't just another Women in Business podcast. What we want to do here is get to know the women behind their brands. We want to delve a lot deeper than just the hustle. So we won't be talking about marketing or funnels or any of that juicy stuff. There is space for that in our community. But today I want to welcome our guest and we're going to really find out all about her and what she does. So please welcome Nabila El-Zanati.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. The sun is shining, so that always helps.
Yeah, it's like officially spring now.
I know.
It feels so good.
Yeah, it feels much nicer.
Yeah. So just before we get started, like tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I'm Nabila. I'm a senior cognitive behavioral psychotherapist and an EMDR therapist. So maybe should I explain what that is, what that
my
means?
first question in my notes is what is, I know what CBT is because I've had it, but let's explain what CBT is.
Sure.
And the one I didn't know was EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Yeah, well done.
Wow.
A big word.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll explain what they mean and then it gives a bit more context. So we all think about, I suppose, kind of having therapy and going to a therapist. And I think the traditional form of therapy is like almost Freudian therapy. You kind of go in, you lie on a sofa and you just talk about stuff. But CBT is not like that. CBT is very much like a doing proactive therapy. So it stands for cognitive behavior therapy. And if you think about it, it looks at two main areas. So your cognitions, so the way that you think about things, and then your behaviors. So what are you doing in response to how you're feeling? And CBT will try and change those two areas so ultimately you feel better. So for example, if someone comes in feeling anxious, well, we're going to look at what are their thoughts that are making them anxious and what are their behaviors that they're doing in response to their anxiety. And then we're changing those two things. And we know if we change those two things, the anxiety will then start to come down.
Okay.
So it's really clever the way that we do it. Everyone comes in saying, well, I want to change the way that I feel. But actually, well, where's that coming from? There's no point in us saying, okay, well, yeah, we can just change the anxiety, but we have to get to the source of it. So that's CBT. It's a here and now therapy. It's very much, okay, this is what's going on. How do we change it? And I suppose it falls in line with how I am. I think I'm quite a proactive type of person. So that therapy was a good fit for me when I was choosing like what career path to go down.
Okay.
Whereas kind of maybe sitting and talking about things is helpful if people need that, but I think I needed something that was a bit more, I could see the results from it.
Yeah, I always thought that like the sit down therapy was counselling.
Yes.
And then therapy was different.
Yeah. The thing is, there's lots of different types of therapy that people can be trained in. So you can have like psychodynamic therapy, integrative therapy, counselling, you're right, is a talking therapy, but counselling is more about kind of allowing that person to get to the solution themselves by kind of talking about how they're feeling and kind of helping navigate them. So it's about processing of the emotion, whereas CBT is more, I suppose, a bit more techniques. How do you manage it? What are the practical solutions? So it's a different, they're all achieving the same thing, but in different ways.
Yeah, I remember when I self-referred for CBT, but I didn't know what it was at the time. I just saw the word therapy and was like, yeah, this is going to help me.
Yeah.
And then I was expecting like the counselling type therapy. Yeah. But in hindsight now, I feel like this is probably the best. That was the best for me at the time because it felt very like logical.
Exactly.
And like, it wasn't like I was going there just to like cry it out or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that you were able to kind of like learn about it and experience it, and hopefully it was helpful.
Yeah, it was so helpful. Yeah.
But then also like for some people, they just need to go and cry it out. You know, like depending on what stage they're at, like say for it's a bereavement, for example, they don't need actually maybe solutions. They just need to talk about how they're feeling. So actually then counselling can be actually very helpful. So, you know, it depends on where you're at in your life and what you need.
Yeah.
Depends on kind of what therapy you might need.
Yeah. I think I had like a phone call at the time.
Yeah,
they
like an assessment.
interview you. Yeah. Assessment's probably a better word. But I guess from that, they decide what type of therapy you need. Is
Exactly,
that right?
yeah. So I currently work between the NHS and privately. So in my NHS work, it's very much like you'll have we call it like a triage assessment. You'll kind of, a clinician will find out what's going on for you and then figure out from there what therapy you might need, or even if you kind of need therapy at all, because some people maybe are just going through a difficult time and they just need to speak to somebody, but they might not need formal therapy, whereas some people really do. So that's what that assessment does. It kind of really captures what's going on for you and then decides what level of support you need. So, and that's a service, I'm assuming the one that you maybe went for is like a service that exists across the board. Like it's a UK initiative that means that anybody can access free therapy, which is amazing because that never existed before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that wasn't a thing, I think, until 2009. That's when the first like pilot sites got launched. And then basically therapy was free for everybody, whereas through your GP or through self-referral, whereas before everyone would pay for therapy in that way, unless it was quite severe. But now it's IAP services, talking therapy services, is a free service that most people don't even know about.
Yeah. So. I was going to say something while you were talking. Now I don't remember what it was. But this happens all the time when I interview people. Oh, yeah. So CBT, do you think there's like a certain type of, not a certain type of people, but is it mostly people that are suffering like with depression, or is it just a range of different types of people?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a range of presentations, but I think like what you were saying before, like it's about maybe that approach that you need at that time. So I think CBT is definitely helpful for people who want help getting the change and finding the techniques and learning ways of coping maybe, whereas other people maybe that's not the best fit for them at that time. But it's not just for it's for depressive and anxiety disorders mainly. So we're talking about like social anxiety, PTSD, OCD, panic disorders. So there's so many things that it can work with, as well as like our conventional depression and anxiety. But yeah, it's definitely open to loads of different people. So it's very I don't know how to explain it as CBT. I like it. I suppose is the best way of explaining it. I like the way it works, but then it's also adaptable, and I think that's what I like about it as well. It doesn't have to be a one size fits all. It can be, okay, well, this is how we're trained. This is what we're taught to work with, but then how can we change it up depending on who's in front of us?
Yeah. Okay, and then what was the other one? EMDR, psychotherapist.
So EMDR is basically, if I try and explain it as succinctly as I can, because it's quite like technical, but it basically is really helpful for trauma therapies. A lot of therapists that are trained in it mainly work on it because they become like trauma focused CBT/EMDR therapists. And actually it's really helpful because all it means is that when you think about when a brain goes through a traumatic experience, it doesn't store the memory in the correct part of the brain. It stores it in the amygdala, which is like our emotion sense. So then what we have to do is we have to try and move that memory through to our hippocampus. So our hippocampus,
I have no idea what that is.
Basically another part of the brain. So it basically helps us store memory. So then what happens in trauma is that you might have a trigger. So let's use an example because I think it's helpful. Let's use an example of somebody being attacked. So they're walking in the street and they're attacked, and they have then traumatic memories from that. So they have flashbacks, they have nightmares because they thought in some way they were going to die. Yeah. What the brain does is it keeps that memory quite cleverly really in the amygdala because it keeps you alert. So every time then you go out into the street again, you're conscious, you're looking around, you're hypervigilant, you're protecting yourself. So it stores it in the emotion center, which is our amygdala. Then what it doesn't do is transfer it through to the hippocampus, saying that actually we're safe now. That was a memory, that's something bad that happened, but every time I go on the street, I don't need to be fearful. So it starts to then tone down. So what you notice with people who have trauma is that they get fixed in that response. So that's why you notice people have flashbacks and nightmares, as their brain hasn't quite processed what's happened to them. So then what EMDR does is it tries to, have you ever seen like a child or even like a dog we use commonly, is like when they're dreaming their eyes are moving.
They flicker,
That's because they're processing.
Okay.
So they're processing because they're dreaming. Dreaming is what? It's REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. It happens in stage 4. stage 3 or 4. I'm testing my knowledge now. So then what we do is we then try and replicate that in therapy. So what we do is we talk about the memory, the traumatic memory, for example, whilst moving your eyes. So EMDR would be like this. You would follow my eyes as you're reliving the memory.
Oh, wow.
So what we're doing is we're getting your brain to process the memory whilst your eyes are moving. So what are we doing? We're helping that memory go from your amygdala to your hippocampus.
That's so interesting.
Crazy.
So then what can happen if the memory stays in the amygdala, did you say?
Yeah, it keeps firing.
Happens?
So then what happens is it's in the emotion center. So because it hasn't been compartmentalized in your brain, what that means is it keeps firing off when it's not meant to. So even if you're not in danger, say for example, you hear a sound at home.
Okay.
You're not in danger, but your brain's firing, telling you, actually, hang on, something's not right. So that's why with trauma it's so like debilitating sometimes, because your brain is actually not allowing you to shut down. And that's why I think with trauma it's a really important one, because we often think you can have conventional therapy and you'll be okay, when actually it's a lot deeper than that. Biologically you're also not okay. So that's why EMDR is really, really effective, and I think why I wanted to train in it was because it's got really quick results. So that's why often people who have like lots of therapy, at the end they're like, let's try EMDR, because it's almost like it's a different way of doing things.
Yeah, I feel like that should be like the first thing you do.
Yeah, it should be, but just it hasn't been around maybe long enough, or it hasn't been, not enough people are maybe trained in it. So often it's not the go-to therapy.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's not like out there. It's out there, but it's not like as...
not as common.
Yeah, it just hasn't been around long enough, I think, to be so effective and so like the first option.
Yeah.
But you're right, it should be maybe the first option.
Does that kind of, like, if that is happening to your brain, is that where things like PTSD come in?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders. So, you know, like we see a lot of that like in like war veterans or people who have like multiple traumas. They'll come back with PTSD because they've witnessed things that are so distressing. And the main thing with PTSD, to differentiate it, is that at some point you thought that your life or someone else's life was in danger. Yeah. So there's an active threat. And that's what PTSD is really honing in on, that you just at some point felt that you were probably going to die. So then we're talking about like, you know, attacks. A lot of sexual abuse can also come into this. A lot of burglaries, for example, terror attacks, like loads of different things that basically at some point you could develop PTSD because you thought you were going to die.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
It is awful, but it's so interesting the way that your brain can hold on to things to try and keep you safe. But then what that safety means is that you have a lot of anxiety responses to that.
Yeah. Let's go back a step.
Yeah.
Why are you in this field? Like, is this something you've always done? And like, what was the curiosity with like being a therapist?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think psychology has always been my career, I suppose. And I suppose I went to university and I studied psychology, so that's where it all supposed started. Actually, even before that, I suppose I did my an A-level in psychology.
Okay.
And that's when I thought, oh, I quite like this. And I really liked my teacher, actually, my lecturer. She was just really nice, a nice lady. She explained things well. And I think I just loved the thought of helping people, I suppose. And then it got to, I said, okay, what am I going to do at university? And I was like, psychology. So I went to do a 4-year degree, and then I did 2 work experiences in that. One was in like an autistic school for children, obviously for children if it's a school, but just like working with autistic children. I think it was actually from when they were primary to secondary, so it was an independent school. And that was really eye-opening because then that allowed me to see just what autism was. You know, at this time I was probably, I think that was my second placement, so I was about 19. So yeah, I didn't really know much about autism at that point. And then that was really lovely. And I actually did my dissertation on autism, so that was nice. And then my first placement, I worked in Holloway Women's Prison.
Wow.
So I did a forensic placement. that was an experience
Yeah,
in
I can
itself.
imagine.
And then I knew I didn't want to do that.
Did you choose that, or was it like,
yeah.
oh wow.
So when you go to uni and you do like a placement year, they kind of give you like a list of placements, and then you choose what you wanted. And I was like, that sounds interesting.
Oh my God.
I want to work in a prison with women.
Yeah.
And we worked in this. It's actually me and a girl that was on my course, so we got quite friendly, and it was an amazing experience. Like when I think about what it taught me now, so much about like offending behavior, why people offend, how to rehabilitate. So it was an eye-opener in the best form, but it was hard work because, you know, you would hear women crying, and there was a mother and baby unit there, and that was really distressing because you'd see like women, obviously some of them, they're giving birth and then they're going back to prison, and then you hear crying babies in there, and then the babies are then removed from them often and then taken to usually social care. They're put into foster care, or obviously if they've got family. So it was hard. And that was my first place. I was about probably 18 at that time. And being a woman, going into a women's prison, like there was lots of like inappropriate comments, and you know, it wasn't easy, I think, as an 18-year-old going into that. But it very, very big experience for me, which I loved in the end of it.
Did you study here in the UK?
Yeah.
Because your name is quite exotic. Where are you originally from?
So my father's Egyptian,
Okay,
and my mum's English.
Okay.
But yeah, I was born here. So
okay, so you're like me.
yeah. So family background, but yeah, we're born. Where are you from?
Well, I was born here too, but my dad's Spanish and my mum is South American.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, so nice mix.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it was nice because it meant that, what I was saying about that, how that ties in actually, it's a good point, is that my dad, after that I wanted to travel. You know, after I finished uni, 4 years, I'm like, okay, I want to go and experience the world. My dad was like, okay, fair enough, that's fine, you can. But I actually as well, I'm not a backpacking type of girl, as you might guess. So I was like, no, I need a bit of luxury. So how am I going to travel, but like not like with the bugs sort of thing? Like I couldn't do like hostels and things like that. Like, I think I would have loved to, but I just didn't think it was for me.
That's like me as well. Yeah.
So I was like, let me work for an airline.
Oh, I love this. I can see you as an air hostess. Oh, you don't say air hostess anymore, do you?
Yeah, I think it's like cabin crew.
That's it.
But I didn't want to, also I didn't want to be away from home a lot. So I worked in grounds, you can do ground staff.
Okay.
So I was check-in. So I worked for an airline for like about a year, and I did check-in, and I absolutely loved it. I was in Heathrow. I was like seeing all the, you know, hustle and bustle of the airport, and I traveled a lot. I did like 8-9 holidays that year.
Nice.
And I love traveling. Like traveling for me is like the best way of experiencing the world, and cultures and everything. So I loved it. And then after about a year, I think I was there for about a year and a bit, my dad, who's obviously Egyptian father, he was like, Nabila, why did we send you to university? Like, well, you went to uni and now you're working in an airline? I was like, well, yeah, but I could still like make something of this. He's like, no, like you went to uni, like make use of it. So I was like, okay. So then that's when I went back into psychology, and then I worked in an inpatient ward in East London, which was again another experience, because that's kind of mental health at its peak, at its worst. Like that's, you're being admitted to hospital because you've declined that much. So that exposed me to things like psychosis, schizophrenia, and personality disorders, like really severe end mental health. And I was there for probably about 18 months.
Wow.
So that's when I started really in the NHS.
Did you have to have like special training for that as well?
Yeah, kind of. Like they give you like, in the NHS, when you work in mental health, you usually get kind of like what we call breakaway training, which is like restraint training, and just basically to keep yourself safe, because there's instances where you could be attacked. And there were times where I was nearly, not attacked, I won't say, but I had things that were like obviously not safe for me, especially as a woman in that industry as well. Like, you know, there's a lot of men who are not unwell. So then there was also instances where it was unsafe. So we had alarms on us. We would pull our alarms, and there would be a team that would come if there was an incident, and not just with us, but between patients. You know, like sometimes there would be instances where they would fight, they would argue because one person's responding and the other person's doing something else, and it would be a full-on altercation. So it was very high impact I remember coming away from the ward some days, like just mind-blowing headaches because it was noisy. There was a lot of like fights. There was like people wanting their medication and then, you know, not getting it on time, and then there would be an incident. So it was very intense to the point where I think it got to about 18 months and I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Not that I wasn't built for it, but I just felt like I wasn't being therapeutic. I wasn't helping them in the same way that I would like to. It was more in an inpatient setting. It's very psychiatry led. So it's very much around like medication, bringing down their symptoms. There is psychology in there, but it's very small in comparison to the kind of medication route. So I just felt like it's not really for me. And then I decided to train to be a therapist, really. So there was an opportunity within the NHS to train whilst you work, so you could get paid while studying. And the NHS pay for the course. And then I went into the world of talking therapy, so IAPT we call it, and then I just kind of progressed from there, really. And then each year, I think I'm quite an ambitious person. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm here, but now how do I get to the next stage? How do I get to the next stage? So I don't know if to go into the whole journey of it, but I kept training throughout the NHS, and then I progressed up. So within the NHS, they've got different bandings. So now I'm at a level where I'm a senior therapist. I manage staff. I have a team which we supervise, and I feel like then, and it was kind of in between, I decided, you know what, I need to also branch out as well and do something for myself, which is then where my business came into it.
Hey ladies, quick pause. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. As mentioned earlier, if you want to be part of our community and be the first to know when we launch, connect with us on Instagram or join the email list. Both links are in the description. We're going to have monthly guest speakers, live check-ins, accountability group, and even some in-person meetups happening throughout the year. And I personally can't wait. I know this business journey can feel lonely at times, but you don't have to do it alone. Connect with us and join the movement. Now, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, and your company is called Psych Me, right?
Yeah. So Psych Me I set up in 2012. So it's quite a little while ago, and I think I set it up mainly because working in the NHS, I felt like there was a lot of people coming to the NHS with work-related problems, and they were on NHS waiting lists. They were doing things that they were kind of coming into therapy, and I was like, well, this should be actually accessible in the workplace. Like, why are they coming to the NHS service for not necessarily things that are quite severe, but they're obviously struggling at work? So then I set up Psych Me to kind of offer corporate wellbeing workshops. So going into organizations and helping them manage their stress at work. So, let's talk about what's going on in your organization. Why are people stressed? And often it's because maybe they're overworked, they're not getting enough recognition, they don't have maybe a culture of looking after their team as well. So we went in and we started doing workshops, and then I loved that. I loved like presenting to people, I like training people, I think maybe being an only child, I was like, and I used to dance a lot when I was younger. Like I'm not afraid to go on stage and do things. So actually that was quite nice for me to like be in that kind of realm. It was something that I just saw as something to do on the side of, because it brought me more income. And then also it was something I love to do without having the restrictions of maybe being an NHS therapist. So it's kind of grown from there, really, but that's kind of why I started it and where it developed from.
So the work that you do privately is more with corporate, and then the work you do with the NHS is more one-to-one, like with patients.
But I do private therapy as well. So I do see clients on a one-on-one basis. So my private work is very much around seeing one-to-one clients and doing workshops. And then my NHS is mainly a few one-to-one clients, and now mainly more management. So I'm mainly doing like line management type of stuff. So that's why it's nice to have my private work, because I can do more clinical work as well. I've got a nice balance at the moment.
It's a nice mix. What's the goal moving forward with that though? Because I think you mentioned to me you want to go fully private, or like what is the goal with it?
The thing is, I love working for the NHS because I get to see clients that I wouldn't get to see privately, in the sense that people that can't afford therapy. So I get the rawness of working in an NHS service. Plus I get to work with a team, which is lovely. I love my team at the moment. And also I love the people that I work with. So that's really nice. And I also like the fact that I get trained in the NHS. I have my supervision. I stay accredited. So there's loads of benefits of me being in the NHS. And also if you have a mortgage, you have a kid, like it's also quite secure.
Yeah.
However, in saying that, it will always be a ceiling for me. I think I've got to a point now where I wouldn't want to go any higher. If I go higher, I'm, then doing things that I think are just going to be too much of a responsibility, like going, above and going to a trust level and managing a whole, like that's not something I'm into, just because I feel like the money isn't enough for the responsibility that I would have. So therefore, the goal, I suppose, would be to do less NHS and more private until the point where maybe my private was, booming, and then I could just do pro bono work. I could still work with these types of clients, but for free because I could afford to.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my ultimate goal, is that I live on my terms. I do the hours that I want to do and make good money from it, because we all need that to survive.
Yeah.
But then also have the freedom to also give back by doing maybe some pro bono work.
Okay. And you're a mum as well, right?
Yeah.
How old is your son?
He's 3.
Oh, actually, I saw a video of him on Instagram.
He's
so
cute. He is cute. He's cute, but it's hard work.
Yeah.
And I think maybe as mums who are working and going through the struggles of life anyway, we don't talk about it enough. So here's to normalize being a working mum. Like, it is hard.
I was going to ask you, how do you navigate that? Because I don't have any kids, but sometimes when I see what mums do and they run their businesses and they're mums and they're doing the school run and they're doing X, Y, Z, I'm just like, I can't even organize my own life. How do you do it?
Do you know what? It's so crazy, because I was the same. Like, before I had my son, I think I was just like, I'd wake up, when I want to wake up on the weekend, I'd be like, oh, I get a lie in, I could do what, it was just you have to think about. And it's so interesting, like when you become a mom, something just switches. You just learn how to adapt to being it. You learn how to wake up early. I would never wake up on a Sunday at 6 o'clock. Now I'm up on Sundays at 6 a.m.
Oh my God, why?
Because mama,
why do they wake up at 6 a.m?
I don't know.
And then when they're teenagers, they don't want to wake up.
They want to stay in their bed all day. I'm saying I look forward to that, but then I'll probably be like, oh, why is he not spending time with me? So I think it's so interesting, like how women are so adaptable. And I think, we go through life and we just deal with things. And I think that's what I've learned about myself in becoming a mum, is that we're so resilient. We are the most, I don't want to, criticize like men, because I think they're also men who are very resilient. Yeah. But I think women, we're able to juggle so much. We multitask in ways that, our counterparts don't have. They don't have the capacity, but not as well, I think, as women do. We can do the laundry, we can work, we can raise children, we can make sure the house is done and there's food cooked. Like, we just get things done. And I think another thing that's really helped me become a working mom is having support. I have amazing family and friends, and I can get support from them. I have friends who are also mums, which is incredible, because I get advice from them. Okay, like even yesterday we went to a friend's house and she's got 3 kids, and I was like, how did you manage this toddler stage? And she just gave me advice, and I was like, thanks. Like, that meant so much, because I was like, I could just talk about that. Actually, it is frustrating for me, and I do lose my patience sometimes. And she was like, it's normal. Like, you're bound to, when your toddler's like screaming at you and having a full-on tantrum. And then maybe trying to kick you at the same time. So I was like, that you're human. So I think it's also having good support, being able to know how resilient you are and adapting. And also, just one thing I've learned in the last 3 years is take the expectation off of myself to be a certain way. Like, maybe I'm not always going to look good because I've had 10 minutes to get ready. Or maybe I'm not always going to make the best meal because I've had my son, on my leg whilst I'm also trying to entertain him. So I think it's also like, don't expect yourself to be how you were before children. You have to be like, okay, I'm maybe going to give 80% to this because I'm also giving the other 20% to this. So I think you have to be flexible and lower your expectations of yourself sometimes.
Do you think your work helps you to be a mum, though?
Yeah,
Do you ever
I think
therapize
so.
yourself? son.
Yeah, I try. I wish. Right, Amari, we're going to sit down and we're going to do some therapy.
How does this make you feel?
Yeah, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
Sometimes. Sometimes it does. And I think I have, again, this going back to our support network, I have a lot of friends who are very like emotionally intelligent and very mindful. So I think also they are also therapy for me. Like if I'm having a bad day or I've gone through something, or, you know, I just need to talk about it, I know I can pick up the phone and someone's going to be on the other end to help me through it. So I think, yes, my job does help because it allows me to reflect. I think that's a big thing. After like something's happened or there's been a situation, really try and think about what's happened and try and like think, okay, well, how could maybe I do that differently, or how could I be better? But also I think having friends who are therapists, some of them, and also just friends who are very in tune with emotions, I think is really important for me.
Yeah.
That's a big bonus if you're a friend that's emotionally in tune.
Yeah.
Because that helps.
Do you think that like what advice would you give to people that are like on the wait list? Because I've been hearing that like the wait list now for therapy via the NHS is like a year to 18 months.
Yeah.
So what do you do like when you're in that wait list? Like what are people struggling with? Is it just like a range of things, or?
Yeah, I think it's a big barrier at the moment because the NHS as we know it here is like limited, you know, and the reason is because there's so much demand. If you think about it, there's so many people who need help but not enough of the resource, so i.e. therapists in the service, for example. So I suppose the biggest thing is to get the support that you can outside of it whilst you're waiting. I suppose that means you might have to have a few sessions if you can afford to with a private therapist.
Okay.
And there's loads of stuff online at the moment in terms of like self-help.
Yeah.
So like trying to learn what techniques you can whilst you're waiting. So this might even be things like learning your breathing exercises or learning about educating yourself about, say, if you have panic attacks, what panic attacks are and how to manage them. So I think we're in an era where the internet is really helpful in that way because there's so much information out there. But I suppose one of the biggest things is try and get as much support as you can sooner rather than waiting. And then get like when I mentioned about maybe support, like who is your support? Who are you talking to? Because often our friends are our therapy a lot of the time. Our partners are our therapy. Our mums, our dads, like whoever it is, like don't be afraid to talk about things. Because I think sometimes we keep, especially mental health or the way we're feeling, like in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the worst thing that you can do when you're struggling.
Yeah.
You need to be able to get it out.
Yeah, I'm so bad at that. Like I hate talking to people.
Yeah.
But I think that that's where therapy actually helped me, because sometimes I feel like for me it's easier to talk to a stranger than it is to like family. Because then I feel like they're gonna worry and then they're gonna want to baby me, and that's not what I need.
Yeah. And that's why therapy is so effective. And I mean, I know I shouldn't say everyone should, but I think everyone should have therapy at least once in their life.
I agree with you.
Because it's the experience of going to a person who doesn't know you, who is non-judgmental, who is trained in being empathic, that gives you a whole different experience of yourself. Like actually, that means that I can learn about myself in a way that my mom or my best friend or my partner is not going to be able to help me with, because you just let out. There's no shame. You're not like telling people about things that you maybe don't really want them to know, because it's your innermost feelings, your innermost thoughts. So actually when you go to a therapist and the room is just you two, the door's closed, you're already told at the beginning anything you tell me is confidential, everything can come out. So it's such a powerful experience to have pet therapy.
I also feel with me personally is like there was a lot of shame around feeling depressed, because I didn't feel like I had a legitimate reason.
That's a really good point.
And so I don't know, I just felt like I didn't want to bombard people with my feelings, but I didn't know why I was having those feelings at the same time.
I think that's really nice, and I suppose it's just like a nice point. I mean, is that you get to, I think a lot of people feel like that, like they actually don't want to kind of talk about things because they're like, well, my problem isn't big enough. My problem isn't like I haven't gone through like, you know, a world crisis, or I haven't lost somebody, and actually you're like, well, no, like every experience is valid because it's about how it aligns with you. And I think if you're misaligned in some way, whether that be, life isn't going how we expect it to, then of course it can affect anybody. So I think it's it's never a case of your problem isn't big enough or valid enough. It's a problem for you, and therefore it's something that can be addressed.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced a time in your life where you needed therapy?
Yeah. I've been to therapy like 3 or 4 times.
Oh, really?
I love it.
With CBT or just general, like?
Yes, I think counselling, and I've also had CBT. I think the last one I had was CBT. And they were because I think I had like specific things happening in my life. So, one was actually when I was doing my master's, when I was doing my postgraduate. I think I got very overwhelmed with the course itself. And I felt like, I'm not coping very well. Like I felt very anxious.
Yeah.
So that's when I got some therapy. And then another one was when I was going through actually a relationship breakup. And then that was another thing that I was like, I think I need some help. I need to talk about this. And again, I think it was some of the best things I ever could have done for myself, because I learned so much about me, and in that time it helped me. It helped me navigate my emotions and get to a place of peace. So, and also in therapy you're often taught you have to go to therapy. Like you need to know what it feels like to be the client.
Yeah.
So it was also an experience for me when I was doing my course. I was like, no, I want to go to therapy, because how I felt a bit hypocritical. Like, how can I encourage people to go to therapy and I've never done it? So I was like, I have no shame in expressing that I've been, and also that how helpful I found it. And luckily I've had great therapists. I think that's another thing. Like being a therapist, going to therapy, I think it's almost like, I don't know, maybe it'd be like, I don't know how to explain it, like a mechanic going to another mechanic. Like you're always going to be like, well, actually, did you check that? And actually, did you do that?
Yeah.
So I was like, I had great therapists and I went into therapy saying like, yeah, I'm a therapist, but please treat me as a client. Treat me as though I know nothing. And that way I think it takes the pressure off of them to like, oh, well, am I saying things that she already knows? Like, so it was really powerful for me. So that's why, again, I'm an advocate that I think everyone should have therapy at least once in their life when they're struggling, because everybody's going to have a struggle.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned breakups, because I was on someone else's podcast recently as well, and we were talking about like getting over a relationship breaking up. And I think that like we don't really give breakups like the space they need.
Yeah.
Because they feel like really like physical, like it's not just emotional.
It is physical because it's like it's a loss.
Yeah.
If you imagine it like if we lost a family member or a loved one, it would be normal really to go to bereavement counselling. So actually having a relationship breakdown is obviously, it's not the physical loss as such, but actually sometimes it is because you're not physically connected. But it's also the emotional loss and the loss of what you thought your life would be like. And then now that person who potentially would have been your life partner, you would have married, etc., is no longer. So it's not just about the relationship breaking up, it's everything that comes with that. It's my life now is different than I thought it would be. So I think that's also a really important point, is like if you see it as a loss in that way, I think it's more, people can give it more justification that why would I not go and talk about this.
Do you work with mostly women, or is it mixed?
Mixed, yeah.
Okay.
I do work with men and women, but I suppose the big proportion of my clients is women. I think women access therapy more than men do.
We're more open to it. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that there's like common things that women go through that they then seek therapy for?
That's a good question. I'm just thinking what women more would come for. Yeah, I think the presentations are different. I think women a lot of the time is about depressive disorders. I don't think as many men come forward with depressive disorders. I think men mainly come with things like anger, panic, if they're having troubles at work, like kind of very kind of recent apparent things that are happening. I think women, we're definitely more in tune and more emotionally driven. So I think the majority of women will come for a range of different things, whereas I think men definitely come with certain types of presentation. Social anxiety, a lot of men come for as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or self-esteem. So I see quite a lot of men with self-esteem actually. But I think a lot of men often, not all the time, I think definitely it's changing, and men are becoming a lot more open to mental health and going to therapy than they were in the past. Like my dad's generation, What's therapy? No,
No,
well,
yeah,
you
it's
know,
not a
just get
thing.
on with it. Like, okay, dad, I get that, but like maybe you should talk to someone. Not my dad
Yeah.
per se, but you know, like just men in general. But a lot of men, like old school thinking is you just get on with it. You just deal with it. Whereas women, yeah, we deal with it, but we also want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, like we want to have a sit down and chat. Whereas men, I think, have a different approach to problems than we do.
Yeah, I agree. Just a quick reminder, guys, while you're here, if you have a podcast or a podcast idea brewing in that little brain of yours, I would love to support you. I currently have a mini course that helps you tackle the top 3 things that I hear that stops people from launching their podcast. I've also got other resources to help you launch or grow with ease. No more stressing over editing or strategy. I've got you. Just connect with me on Instagram and let's chat about how we can bring your podcast to life. It is time to stop procrastinating on this one. Okay, let's get back to the episode. And also, I feel like women create their own little communities. Like you said, you have like friends that are mums and you talk about things, and I just feel like we are really good at that. And like,
we
let's
are.
meet up for brunch and
Have a cup of
coffee.
tea. Yeah. Like it's so like a thing, isn't it, to do? We want to sit and have a good like catch up.
Yeah.
Whereas men, I think they do. I think a lot of men do talk, but I think it's more not in the depth, I think, that maybe women talk. It'd be like, how are you? Yeah, I'm all right, but this is going on. Anyway, yeah, so what's on the football? Like, you know, like something, I don't think they maybe, and I don't want to stereotype because I think every person is very different, but I think we like to talk about things in a different way than men do, which I think maybe explains, again, the correlation between why maybe more women come to therapy than men.
Do you like change your style towards men and women, or is it the same?
Sometimes I think I like to be a therapist that changes my style depending on whoever's in the room. So I'm very culturally aware as well. So in my team, I'm the equality, diversity and inclusion lead.
Nice.
So I love to actually think about that person's journey based on their cultural experience as well. So it's not just about the fact that they're a man or a woman, but it could just be how are they different in any way, even if it's a person that comes in with a disability or somebody who comes in who's from a LGBTQ background. We have to be able to say, well, how have their experiences shaped them? So I think it's more about, yes, they're a man or a woman, and I think sometimes I might do, but it's not so much based on that. It's based on what they're coming with as a whole, and then I'll adapt it dependent on that.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So say if they're a Hispanic man who's coming in who's also gay, then that's going to be a completely different avenue than say a white straight man who has a completely different experience of life. So yeah, I have to adapt it depending on what the whole picture is, men, women, you know, and everything else that comes in between.
Yeah, it's so interesting though.
Yeah,
I feel like there's obviously like so many different types of people that would come to therapy as well. So
yeah, and I work in a London borough that's like very diverse, and then obviously working in London, even with my private clients, it's very diverse, which is why I love London. You know, I love to travel and I love different places. If there was more sunshine here, I would love it even more because I like being in hot climates. But I think I love the fact that it's such a melting pot. And I think working in London allows me to experience that, and therefore, you know, just get to a place where I can work with people from all different backgrounds, which I think for me, who's very into the cultural experience and where we come from and what that means for us, I think that's really nice for me.
yeah. Do you still travel? Do you still get to travel as much as before?
Not as much, having a toddler, but yeah, I definitely travel as much as I can. So we're actually going to go to Egypt in May, which will be nice. So it will be an experience for my son to, you know, just see his culture. And I think for me, I'm obviously mixed. I grew up in a mixed background, my mum being English, my dad being Egyptian, but I was brought up as in you're Egyptian. And I think that's why everyone's like, oh yeah, I would never think you're like English. And I'm like, I am, and I'm very proud of my other side, but I'm Egyptian. Like I just feel like I've got that's been instilled in me from a young age. So I like to go back there. I like to eat and cook the food. I like to, like, you know, have a connection to my roots. And I think maybe because it's Egypt and it's got such a big history, you know, I love everything about ancient Egypt. And I want my son to now, also being born in this country, also have that. because I think when generations get diluted almost, I don't want him to forget that. My dad was born in Egypt, so he obviously told me everything about what it was like, whereas I wasn't. So I've only experienced it from going there a lot and from, you know, being around my family there. Whereas if I don't teach my son that, he'll lose that because he's here. So I think I have to, you know, it's my duty, I feel, and my dad's duty, and like my in-laws that have, you know, have the same background, that they get to a place where he feels connected. He knows who he is. He knows this is who who I suppose his history basically.
Exactly. Is it his first trip anywhere?
He's been to Thailand and he's been to Turkey.
Wow, those are amazing places.
We had a wedding in Thailand, so we went there. So that was why I would never recommend going that far with a baby. He was 18 months at the time with that. Because that was quite hard. So definitely maybe start
that flight as well.
I think we stopped as well. We stopped in, I think it was Dubai or Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
So then it was like 8 hours and then another 8 or 9 hours.
Oh my God, so much.
So it was a long journey. And coming back, he got heat stroke. He had diarrhea on the plane. So I was there in the you know, like in the toilets on the plane, they're like super small. I'm there like wiping him, like in the sink, getting rid of everything. And then I was like, you know what? Never again. I came back from that holiday needing another holiday. So, but he's travelled a lot. He's travelled a fair bit for a 3-year-old. He's travelled a lot
for his age,
But Egypt, I think for him will be, and for me, and I suppose we're going to go with my dad, so I think that'll be a nice experience because he'll get to see where, like I said, I think it's just really important for him to see where he's from. You know, the other holidays, like Turkey's nice, not too far. It was hot. It was a nice place, but it was not. Egypt's different because Egypt's his home, I suppose, in a kind of background way.
I love that. Have you had like any struggles being like a mum in business or even a woman in business?
Time is, I think, a big factor, and I think that's what I've struggled with most recently, is like trying to grow my business and make it successful and not having enough time, as much time as I would like. And I think that's because maybe it's just about my situation. You know, I'm working also in the NHS. I have a young child. I have a home that needs to be run, like, you know, in terms of like the domestic side of things. So I think it's just managing it all. I think that's been my biggest barrier. Holding it all up when I'm tired sometimes.
Of course.
Sometimes I'm like, I really need to do that, but I actually really need to sleep. And then I think that's been my biggest barrier, is like I feel like I don't have enough time to do everything I would love to do.
So if you had more time, what would you be doing with it?
I think I'd be doing more to just make it how I see it in my head.
Okay.
Because I have a vision of how I want my business to be and what I want it to do and how it needs to grow. And I suppose that having coaching has helped with that, to kind of help me know what direction I need to go in. But I feel like I physically maybe don't have enough time to do it. And also, if I do make time for it, something's giving, which is, for example, maybe quality time with my son, or maybe the house is not going to be as spick and span, or I'm not going to see my friends as much. So it's almost like a compromise. But then I'm like, well, maybe I have to like limit that stuff in order to do that, to get where I need to be. So I think it's always a battle between like, what do you choose? So I think that's been my biggest kind of barrier and biggest battle in terms of having a business and trying to do everything else.
That's interesting, because honestly, I don't know how you do it. I feel like I don't have enough time.
Yeah, but then imagine like some people do it with more kids.
I know. Even my mum sometimes, she's like, well, I had 3 kids and I went back to work like after 2 weeks of having her third child or something. And I was like,
crazy.
Yeah, well, that's you.
Yeah, we're not all like that. And I think they were kind of built differently back then. I don't know, like the work ethic was something else.
How my mum does half the stuff that she does even now, like in her 60s. So
But what for her? Like, what do you think? What was helpful for her? Do you think? How did she do it?
I think with her is she just, in her head, that is her role. And it's like what you said earlier, like just get on with it. Like this is what I'm here to do, and
just do it.
Like I don't have time to be thinking about other things or thinking about my self-care or anything like that, because this is my priority. And I think that's like one of the things that I try to like support my mum with, is like self-care. Like we're going on a retreat in May together.
Lovely.
And it's like a wellness retreat, so there's a mixture of like health stuff and like personal development. And I'm always like, Mum, you need to make time for yourself. Like, I'm really proud that she goes to Pilates every week now. That's like her thing, and she doesn't
skip
from
it.
Yeah. But apart from that, like growing up, it was always like she just did everything. And I honestly, now as a woman, I'm just like, how did you do this?
But you see, it's so interesting what you said. Like maybe something did give for her. Like she almost compromised on her self-care and like taking time maybe to look after herself, even if it's like get her hair done or get her nails done, or that probably she didn't. That wasn't a priority.
Yeah.
Whereas the kids, like maybe you guys were, and going back to work to make money to support the family, that was the priority. And I think it's really interesting. Like even I started trying to work out again, and I've got a PT who's amazing and helps me focus.
Yeah.
But I think it just it made me realize that even I don't have time to go to the gym sometimes. And I said, I'll commit to going 3 times a week, but sometimes I can't.
Yeah.
Because I'm exhausted sometimes by the end of the evening when I say I'm going to go after my son goes to sleep, or something else comes up. So I have to say, can you put some home workouts in for me? Because at least then I can try and maybe do 15 minutes at home rather than get it into my gym where get in the car, go to the gym. So that's an hour, then come back, get in the shower. And I'm like, sometimes that's just maybe a bit too much.
Yeah.
And I remember actually listening to, I think it was a podcast clip where someone said like they think that women can have it all. Women think they can have it all. And actually you can't. You can try, but if you try and have it all, you're going to burn out.
Yeah, I've seen people say that like you can have it all, but it's in stages.
Yes.
You can't have it all at once.
That's it, yeah. And I think that's so interesting when you think about that. Like if you want to be a great mum, for example, maybe you can't also be the best at your job in that moment, because maybe the people who are the best in their job, that is their main focus, which means that they're going to put in the extra hours. They're going to like work extra hard. Whereas maybe you can't do that if you need to get back for say a 3:30 pickup, because you can't actually do the stuff that maybe someone who didn't have a child would be able to do time wise.
Yeah.
Not that you can't do it in terms of your mental ability or your capability as, say, in your work, but it just means maybe you're just not able to because you can't give all of that.
Yeah. I think this is what scares me so much about being a mum, because I feel like, maybe because I've watched my mum do it, but I feel like when you decide to be a mum, there's like a massive sacrifice. And I want to be selfish. Like as much as I don't even want to say that out loud.
Yeah, no,
like,
but it's good.
I want my time. Like I want to be able to just travel if I want to, or like go out or go to the gym or whatever. Like whatever I want to do, I want the time to be
do
mine.
it. Yeah.
And I don't want to like lose myself.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good reflection that you've made, because I think in a way, sometimes when we do have children, we do lose ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think, and I'm very proud of myself if I can give myself credit that I've managed to do this, is I find ways. Like I'll find ways to still travel, and my son can come, or if he's not able to, someone will look after him. I can go on a 3 or 4 day trip.
Okay.
So like I've gone to, like, my friend was moved to Dubai, and then it meant that I could go for 5 days and see her by myself.
Okay.
Because my son can be looked after by somebody else now he's a bit older. So that was amazing, but I couldn't go for like a 10-day holiday. I'd miss him, he'd miss me. But at least that way I could still have some time for myself, connect with my best friend, and just still be a good mum. I think that's the thing, we feel a bit guilty sometimes that we're like, I can't do these things because I got to be there for my children 100%. But remember, we talk about this analogy in therapy, like if we're like apple trees, and imagine you are like the trunk, and all of your responsibilities are your branches, family, job, money, maybe paying the bills, like all of those things are your branches. So we try so hard to keep those things afloat. But what happens if the trunk is not secure, if the trunk is not nourished enough, i.e. you're not being watered or fed? Those branches are going to have an impact. The apples will start falling from the tree because there's not enough nourishment in them. And it's the same with us. Like if we do not look after ourselves, we are there and basically not happy. We're not kind of in a good headspace. Those other things are going to come crashing down. So I think it's often if we look at it like that, and that's really helped me in becoming a mum is that, no, I need to work out.
Yeah.
I need to actually look after myself and feel good about myself,
Yeah.
because then I'll be a better mum,
Yeah.
or I'll be a better partner, or I'll be a better daughter, because then I'm happier in myself. So now that I've got that mentality, I think I feel less guilty about doing things like meeting my friends, you know, and saying, actually, no, you can't come with me because mummy needs her own time.
Yeah.
And I think that way, I think if you live life in that way when you become a mom, I think then you can have the best experience of it, because then you don't just feel completely worn out and that you don't have time to do everything that makes you you.
Yeah.
Like you said, like you want to travel, you want to go out and have fun, you want to do things that you would do now. Children don't have to stop us from doing that.
Yeah.
It might change it a bit. It might make the dynamics of that a bit harder because it takes more organization.
Yeah.
But you know, it doesn't mean that we stop becoming who we are just because we become a mom.
Yeah, that's what I think is like a misconception that I have.
Yeah.
Also, you know what else? I can imagine that like when I'm a mum, I'm going to be that annoying mum who's like at the PTA meetings, who's like
everything.
doing the bake sale. Like I want to be like
Involved,
that
yeah.
kind of mum.
But that's
And
nice.
so, I know, but then that to me is like organization in
It's
my head.
effort,
Like
yeah.
it's so much effort.
But are you an organized person?
Yeah.
Then I think you'll be all right. Because I think it's so like I've got a friend and she's got 2 kids, and our children, so my son and her daughter were born a week apart. She is so organized but on it, and I look at her and I'm like, I have so much respect for her, because I'm like, you still manage to give them amazing parties. You manage to make sure they look good all the time, not all the time, but you know, most of the time, kids are kids.
Yeah.
But like, she just seems to, and I know it's hard, I know it's stressful because I know her, but at the same time I'm like, she's killing it, because the organization is key. Like, and I've also got another friend who's got 4 kids and she still goes to the gym, she still looks amazing, and I'm like, fully respect you for doing what you do, because again, it's not necessarily, I think, about the way that we are in terms of like the organization. I think it's also about giving ourselves grace.
Yeah.
To be like, yeah, like we're not always going to be everything that we need to be, but it's also being, I suppose, kind to yourself. And also being a bit relaxed about things.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really matter if the house gets trashed. I can pick it up.
Yeah.
You know, like me, when I was first become, I was like picking up everything. Like, I like to be quite neat and tidy. So I was like, yeah. And then I was just like, just leave it. Like, there's no point, because you're just going to tidy up and then you're just going to go around and have to pick it up again. And I was like, it's true. So now I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
If he spills water, he spills water. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I'll tidy it up later. Like, I'm not going to be so pedantic about things, because that was also making me stressed.
Yeah.
When he was like not firstborn, but when he started to become like on his feet.
Yeah.
And then I was, I just have to like enjoy it. I'm not going to have this experience for long.
Yeah.
He's only going to be this age once. So I have to embrace it and not stress out about it.
You'll have to come into the community and do like a how to be a great mum in business.
Oh, I can give what I can.
Yeah.
But I think psychologically there's a lot to think about in terms of like being a mum in business. And I think, again, I think the guilt that we sometimes feel, the pressure that we put on ourselves, and just not even just a mum, but just a woman in business, there's loads of different unconscious biases. There's loads of different things about, you know, how we see ourselves in business maybe, and how we show up. And I think there's so many shifts that can be made, which will then elevate our business.
Yeah.
So I think psychologically there's always, you know, tips and techniques.
Yeah. Because when you think about it, look, I'm not a mum yet, and I'm already putting pressure on myself to like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to take them to this. Like, well, there's not even kids anymore.
Yeah, but you see that's what women do. We're such planners, we're such forward thinkers a lot of the time. We've already like got to, you know, like you said, before even having kids, you've already thought it through.
Yeah.
And it's not even happened yet.
Yeah.
And I think that, going back to your earlier point about like how men and women are different, I think men don't do that as much.
Oh, really?
I think men are very much like one step at a time.
Yeah.
They're more like pragmatic in a way, whereas we tend to worry more. And I think that's also maybe, again, why men and women, I think, complement each other so well, because we can balance each other.
Yeah.
But I think women, we tend to go into overdrive a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Which
is so interesting. We could talk about this
forever.
Okay, so I'm going to finish the interview with what I call the Woman Up wrap up.
Yeah.
So it's just 4 questions that I ask all my guests now.
Yeah.
And they're just designed to be like quick answers.
Okay.
So what's one thing about you that has nothing to do with your job or your business, but plays a huge role in who you are today?
Being Egyptian. I suppose.
Yeah, I feel like that's like really
culturally
important part of your like
identity.
Not your identity, but yeah, just like who you are.
Yeah, I think so. I think background, who I am. I think that's a really important
your
part.
Values.
My values, yeah. Because I think being from a certain culture, that brings that in.
Yeah. Okay. Would you rather go back in time and give advice to your younger self, or meet your future self and see what she has to say?
Meet my future self.
Really?
Yeah. I'm somebody.
I'm torn with this one.
I think I don't have regrets. I think everything that's come into my life has shaped me to who I am.
Okay.
And, there's been things that haven't been nice in my experience, but I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't have them.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go back and change things. And I think being like, I'm a Muslim, so I think that being religious in that way also makes me say, like, we believe that everything is written. So Allah has given us all these tests to make us who we are. So I don't want to go back and change things. I would go back and maybe say I could have done that different, or I wouldn't have done that, or I could have done this, but actually that's life. So I think I would go future.
Okay.
And that would excite me, I think.
To see like what she's doing.
Yeah, because then I think it would like limit any kind of worry that I have about how things may go in my life. I'd just be like, okay, let me see what I'm going to look like in 20 years' time.
Yeah. Okay. If we had this conversation a year from now, what is one thing that you hope to have achieved by then?
I think I'd want it to be freedom. And when I say freedom, I mean like financial freedom and the ability to live how I want to live.
Okay.
So in 20 years, I would love to look back and be like, you know what? Yeah, I achieved that. I was able to travel wherever I wanted to travel and it not be an issue.
Yeah.
I was able to give my son and, if I have future children, the experience of life without restriction.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be, freedom to just do whatever I wanted to do. And I worked hard now to get to that point.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last one is, if you had to describe this season of your life as a song, a book title, or a movie, what would it be?
It would be The Metamorphosis. And what I mean by that is I had a coach who was so helpful, did a lot of inner child work with me. And I was going through a really difficult period. And he was like to me, you're going through a spiritual awakening, like a metamorphosis. And for me, I was like, that makes sense. Because it felt like I had to close chapters and go through things that were no longer for me.
Yeah.
And reach a new elevation. So for me, it would be, the metamorphosis.
I love that. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I've loved talking to you.
Yeah, it's been lovely. Has it been an hour already?
Yeah.
Oh, so we could keep going.
Yeah. It does fly by. I tell
does.
people beforehand, like, it flies by.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, don't forget, if you want to connect with Nabila, all her details are in the description. But generally, please like, subscribe, comment, do all the things, because it really helps the podcast to reach more people. Write us a review if you're listening on a podcasting platform, or if it's YouTube, just pop a comment and make sure you're subscribed. And I will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, that's it for another episode of the Woman Up podcast. Thank you for spending time with us. It really means the world. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take a second to follow the show and leave us a review. It really helps more women to find these conversations. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And also leave us a comment if anything in the episode resonated with you. We love, love, love to hear from you. Even better still, feel free to share this episode and tag us on your socials. Of course, I will see you right here next week for more real talk, sisterhood, and conversations that actually matter. Until then, keep going, keep growing, and woman up.